Well, sorry, let me get a drink there real quick. You know how you got to wet the whistle before you get started. Um, I appreciate you guys being here this morning. You guys ready for some good stuff? Yeah. I'm getting worked. I had a lot of coffee this morning, not on purpose. I've just been kind of drinking it by accident, so I'm feeling a little jumpy at the same time, so I'll try to not talk too fast. But I'm glad you're here. We've been in a series called Walking the Walk, and the whole premise of the series is how do we walk in love, learning to walk in the love of God. And walking the walk, when we said that, it wasn't to be, like a jerk about it. I said, you can talk the talk, can you walk the walk? It was really learning how to do that because, in church, we talk about a lot of things. We talk about a lot of things that, expectations that God has of us. How do we work those things out in our life? And so that's kind of the premise of what we're doing. We've been taking we're the 7th month now of walking this thing out. Has anybody learned anything through it? It's pretty interesting, right? About judgment and what judgment looks like and how we bring all that pain back on ourselves by the judgments we make of other things. And what judgment means, if you've not heard very much about it, judgment doesn't mean something's right or wrong. Judgment means that you are determining why they're doing what they're doing. And that's the thing, because we create our own pain because we determine that I know why you did it, so therefore we can expect things that have happened that didn't even actually happen. Their intent was not that, so we bring a lot of pain in ourselves, and so we learn how to walk through that. But we've been in a shift kind of talking about just in the last few days that have just been something that to me that's just kind of been on my heart just recently, how we walk through things. How do we walk through difficult seasons? How do we walk through those challenges and walk through them in such a way where we feel empowered through those processes? So today, we're going to dive into another area. If you will, just close your eyes. Let me pray over this. Lord, thank you. We welcome you once again into this place. We just ask that you would do what you do best, and that is to just bring life. And so we know the word is life, and so we just pray that as it hits our ears, that it will just begin to just resonate in our heart. Things that we've already believed, things that we know. We're not here, Lord, to learn something new, but just to receive a revelation within ourselves of what we already know to be true about ourselves. And so I pray that validation would hit and it would ring true, and then our faith would just increase with that. And so we just ask that today, and we believe your word, and so we ask that you would help us navigate and to learn to walk in the Spirit, walk in the love of God. So we thank you for that today, and we do this all in Jesus' name. Come on, if you believe that, say amen. Hey, you guys ever been outmatched? Guys are like, never. Yeah. So last few weeks, I have been telling you about when I replaced the air conditioner down at the coffee trailer, right? You guys have been all with that scenario. And so one thing that's interesting is as I was up on top and it was 450 degrees outside. At least that's what my thing said. And I was on top of the trailer. It was so hot, and I'm up there working, and I never had the right tools. I have tools that you get from like Walmart when they give you the big patch of for Christmas. They get you the tool set that, you got to watch or break the handle off of it if not careful, because that's what I have. I have the saw that you put a battery on, and it's like, yeah, and it just stops the moment you hit wood. It spins real good until you hit wood, and then it just stops. So that's the tools I have. So anyway, so I'm up there, and I ran into this. So I got the first 3 bolts, I guess you would call them, off, and then I got into this last one. And let me just tell you, those first 3 were no picnic. And so I'm up there, and all I have is a screwdriver at first, but then I got this screw gun. My dad brought one, so I got my dad's screw gun, and I'm trying to do this thing. Well, I don't know anything about bits. So I just put one that's, I know Phillips and flat, right? Everybody knows that. So I just dropped a Phillips on there and just started going to town. It was moving, then all of a sudden it stopped, and then I'm like, okay, just got to push a little harder. So I was getting weight on there, and it just wasn't going. And then next thing you know, I got that thing just bored out like crazy, right? Come on, you know what I'm talking about? That's how you work, right? Didn't know there was a different size number 3 that you use on that. Became aware of that. So anyway, so now listen, next thing I do says this is not work. So I get a pair of channel locks out. So I'm grabbing that bolt, guys, and I am just working on it. I'm trying to turn it because it hit a point where it was just kind of seized up from rust. You know what I'm talking about? So I am just, all I've got, felt like days. It was probably like an hour, but I was just working on this thing. And every once in a while, I would get a little hope because it'd be like, and I'm like, oh yeah. And I'm giving it all I've got for an hour, at least an hour. It may have been longer than that. My dad's sitting down there in the air conditioning, just watching, drinking soda, laughing. My mom's walking around just because she can't wash. She's just got to pace. So she's pacing, and I'm up there just, and so I did this now listen, I'm not weak, right? I can curl 20 pounds, 3 sets of 15, minimal rest. I can do that. So I'm not weak. Okay, it's 25 pounds. I can do that too. So anyway, so I'm not weak, but I'm just all I've got. And this story. So my mom calls James, which probably should have been the first response I had, but I didn't. So James, Jesus, close anyway. So they called James. James shows up. James gets out there just like just like a cowboy western. He's like, he's got the tools. And he doesn't even have to bring like a tool belt. He already knows what you need. Why? Because he said, hey, show me what you're working on. FaceTime. That's what I'm showing you, FaceTime. So he's looking at it and he's like, okay. So he shows up, brings the right tool. So he realizes, hey, we got that thing wore out. So he just cuts the head off of it with a machine. I don't know what kind of machine he had. Just cut the head of it off. And next thing you know, we're in business. Now, here's the thing that I'm trying to bring this story. I was working so hard on that. The suffering that I was going through, unlocking that dude, all the effort I had. Let me just ask you a question. Was that avoidable? Preventable? You guys are like, yeah, well, go do it, yeah, whatever. So yeah, I could have prevented it, right? But I was like, my mind was, I'm going to do this, and then James and all them guys are going to be like, dude, way to go, Because usually I always have to call James, or Ron. And so I was just, all I had. Let me use a verse, 1 Corinthians chapter 15. So yeah, it's preventable. So I want you to think about the word suffering. Suffering, simply defined, means just a hardship, a pain, a difficulty, okay? 1 Corinthians 15 is going to give you a little help here. Verse 9, and then we're going to read down to verse 10. I should have been prepared here. Hang on, let me turn. 9. For I am the least, this is Paul writing, I am the least of the apostles. I'm not worthy to be called an apostle because I persecuted the church of God. Can we just be real and say it's more than persecution? I mean, that sounds like, persecuting can sound like, you're just kind of bullying them, but he did more than just bully them. He actually killed them. You know what I mean? So that just gives a little bit more depth to it. And it says, but the grace of God, or by the grace of God, I am what I am, and his grace towards me was not in vain. I labored more abundantly than them all, yet not I, but the grace of God, which was in me. So here's the question. Why was Paul able to labor more than everybody else? Was it because he's a better Christian than everybody else? Because he knew the Bible better? Because he followed the word of God better than him? I mean, just think about it. Because sometimes I think that's our idea of how God works with people or works in people's lives, is those that are better at doing the Jesus thing than others, so God's more favorable to them, right? How many of you kind of believe that? It's okay to raise your hand. I got my hand up. That's what I believe or believed, is that if you're doing better, God likes you more. How many of you liked your kids more when they picked their room up? Oh, got you, didn't I? Yeah. Kind of like them a little better than you did if they didn't. So we think that God is the same as us because that's how we feel. But he doesn't feel like us. His ways aren't my ways. His thoughts are not my thoughts. His ways are higher than mine, and his ways are better than mine. So take it in this reality. So he says, it wasn't that I was better at this. It was something called the grace of God is why I labored more. Now remember, definitions are important because God never writes anything in the Bible without intent. So we mix a lot of times these two words. We confuse the word mercy and the word grace. We actually believe the word grace means mercy. Meaning this, we think the word grace and mercy are the synonymous words that mean the forgiveness of God. The mercy of God is his ability to forgive us. The grace of God, and we usually define grace, and it's not a complete definition. We usually define it because Strong's define it as unmerited favor. And that just is how grace comes. It comes to you free. It's unmerited. You can't earn it. But there's a deeper definition. If you go look even in Strong's, it'll say this, a divine influence. Ooh. So it's a divine grace. The grace of God is a divine influence. So it's an influence that comes from him. So let's go back to the top of the trailer. So James shows up and he brings some equipment. Now when we get to the bottom underneath, they've got bolts that are like this long that go from underneath to the top to pull the whatever unit down, right? Okay. So this is how I did it with channel locks. For an hour, I undid all 4 bolts before they got there with my arms, with my beastly arms, and just did this. You guys ever done this for an hour? I did it for like 10 minutes, was like, oh my gosh, I need to do something over my head or something lately, because this is just, I was wore out. It took me an hour to do it, okay? James comes in, sticks the bolt up there, pulls out a weapon, does this, and goes, and did it in less than 10 seconds. Now, interesting enough, here's what's cool about that. It wasn't James's strength, because James and I are the same. We're both men. We both have the same muscles. We all have the same parts. Listen, we're the same. But there's something that was different. James relied on something that was not his strength. You would say it was the influence of that machine and its ability. And so he was able to be like, yeah, so, he's just talking and just doing this. And I am just, Now you think, okay, now let's take this into reality. Most of our walk with God looks like this. And he wants it to look like that, okay? So you see the difference. One is operating on the grace or the influence of something else, while the other is operating on its own strength or its own ability. So James has spent his life investing in what causes him to rest or labor less. Come on, just let this sit in. I spent all my time gathering up things that caused me to work more. Interesting, right? So we go to church, and what we do is we gather a lot of information that actually make us feel like we have to work harder at this versus work less and learn how to learn of his yoke and learn how to walk in his grace, which is his divine influence. Let's just define grace this way. It's a divine influence upon the heart that gives you the ability to do what you could not do under your own strength. Think about that. That's a great definition of grace. Let's dig a little further. You guys ready to go a little further? Romans chapter 8. Now here's where it gets. Most of the time, what I define as suffering is really just the effects of my choices. I'll hit your neighbor and say, this is really good. It's just the effects of the decisions I've made, right? I ate ice cream last night, belly hurt all morning. Wasn't the devil being like, okay, stomach ache, right? Because that's what makes it feel easier. I ate the ice cream. Oh, gosh, I was telling them, I was like, my stomach, golly, could it be the half gallon I ate? Or is it something else, okay? So I'm suffering, I'm gonna have a hardship, but it really wasn't because the devil, it was just because I chose that. So here's why. Because we give the devil way too much authority when actually he's defeated and powerless, right? That's Colossians. He's been rendered powerless. But I give him a lot of authority. Why? Because it takes the responsibility off of me. Just don't eat that much ice cream, Josh. A bowl, right? And I get the container out and just pick through it and eat all the chocolate out of it, right? We don't have to do that. You just take your time. Why? Because they may not make any more. So I have to eat all I can right now, right? And that's what's interesting about our nature is that we feel, that's the way we feel with God, is we feel like he may not ever talk to me again, so I better get all I can, do all I can right now, or it's over. So most of the suffering we go through, remember, it's just effects of our decisions. Biblical suffering is defined like this. It's not that someone's trying to kill you all the time because you love Jesus, okay? Biblical suffering is this. It is the tension or the difficulty, the pressure to stay to the Word of God, yield to the Word of God, whenever you want to yield to the other. That's what suffering would look like. It's that suffering of just trusting God when you don't want to trust it and you want to try to do it yourself, right? Because you're just terrified it's not going to work. That's suffering. Can I just tell you, that's the most challenging thing you're going to face in your walk with God, is trusting him in challenges. So whenever you find yourself feeling like emotionally, hard times mentally, emotionally, physically, that's where that tension is at. So think about this. Think about a time when you missed the mark. You messed up. You just fell short of it. You did what you wanted to do instead of yielding to God. We've all been there, right? And you got that feeling, that tension between just giving up on who God says you are or getting up and then trusting him, right? You got that tension where you're just like, I'm so tired of myself. And you got that tension. I want to feel bad about it. I want to just feel like I'm not worth it. And you got that tension. That's what suffering looks. That's the most suffering that you're going to figure out. To die, that's not the hardest part. Why? Because you'll be with him. It's that tension of just like trying to trust him whenever you just feel like you're not worthy enough to trust him, because we can't ever do it right? That's what the suffering more than anything else. How many of you feel like you're about to die every day for the word of God? Anybody? See, now, other countries, you would see that more. You'd see that, you may be persecuted. Here, we don't really have that pressure. But it doesn't mean it's not hard. What it means is we can easily be lulled into a sleep to think everything's just great. You see what I'm saying? I don't need God. I can just make enough money to deal with it. So there's all this, but the suffering, the difficulty of following God is that tension between trusting him and giving into what I want to do, or just giving into the fact that I'm not worthy enough. Now watch this. Here's Romans chapter 8. You guys with me so far? I'll get there. I'm setting you up for something else. All right, hang in there. Romans chapter 8, look at verse 17 when you get there. Verse 17 says this, and if you're children, then you're heirs, heirs of God, and you're joint heirs with Christ, if indeed we suffer with him, that we may also be glorified together. For I consider that the suffering of this present time not worthy to be compared with the glory which is to be revealed in us. So he's given us this little insight that he says this, the suffering that we're going through, the hardship, the pain that we're experiencing is not even worthy to be compared to the glory or the goodness of God or the view and the opinion of God that's going to be revealed in us, right? So what God thinks about us, what we're walking through, that revelation of who he says we are, this that we're walking through is not even comparable. It's not even worthy to be compared, he says. And not just you can't compare him, he says it's not even worthy to be compared to the view and the opinion of God that's going to be revealed in us, right? So that's kind of the setup there. Now, it's easier to yield back into my old ways. Go to Romans chapter 5, right? I'm going to go somewhere here. Romans chapter 5. Now, we're still talking about Paul, so keep him in your mind. Okay, it's not worthy to be compared. Romans 5, look at verse 20, because I want you to think about Paul in this way once I read this verse. Verse 20. Let me get to chapter 5, because I about read you a total wrong verse. Moreover, the law entered that the offense might abound, but where sin abounded, grace much more abounded. The ability of God much more abounded than sin. So here's what I need you to define really quick. Let's define sin really quick, because what we want to define sin is the actions, the things that you do. Sin is simply defined as unbelief. Unbelief, whatever's not of faith, it's unbelief is what sets me up for every fruit that comes off of that, right? So if it's this, we're like, oh, you're doing this. I'm doing that because I have distrust that God has a way to bring about life in that area. Everybody with me? Because sometimes we elevate sin so much that it feels insurmountable. It's just that we are learned to trust in that area or learn to self-soothe in that area so we figure out our own way to walk it out, okay? So he says this, so where sin abounded, grace much more abounded. So let's get this picture. Think about Paul's story, okay? So Paul is trying to turn things around in a different perspective because he was so one way. He was the one that persecuted. Remember, he was the one standing there when they stoned Stephen, right? So when we say they killed somebody, it wasn't like they just was like, okay, it's over. They threw rocks at him until they killed them. Think about that. You ever been hit with a rock? I was mowing the other day and a rock, when I mow in my yard, it sounds like I'm under heavy gunfire because I got pecans, tree limbs. So I am mowing and a rock somehow, I don't know how it happened, flipped up, hits me in the face. Well, I always think everybody's watching me, so I can't respond. But I really want to be like, oh my God. But I can't respond, because my neighbors be up there like, let's just watch Josh mow, which they're not, but I think they are. And so anyway, so I was like, oh my gosh. So I was thinking about this and I thought, that hurt, and it was just like it probably was like a pebble, but it felt like a boulder because it hit with the force of the speed of light coming out of that thing. And it's just like smack. So anyway, it hurt. And I was thinking, can you imagine standing there watching Stephen be stoned to death and being like, Yes, you deserve it. He was for it. He was in it. Why? Because he felt that they were against what God was doing. So he says he persecuted them. Now think about that. The effects. Can you imagine once he was redeemed and he experienced Jesus, can you imagine the weight or the suffering of having to overcome those thoughts? Going around people that knew Stephen, and you're the one that killed him, and having to deal with it. I never thought about that until this recently. I was like, holy moly, that was not as easy as I projected it out to be when I read that story. He's dealing, and they're trying to welcome. He's like, hey guys, I'm born again. And they're like, hey, I don't know if I trust this guy. Why? Because he just killed my best friend. How can I trust him? So now Paul's spending his entire life trying to get out of it, not just with people, but can you imagine that own suffering in your own mind? I shot a deer one time when I was hunting. I've hunted some in my life. I killed 2 deer. First one I ever shot, I was excited about it. I shot this. I was in my 20s, so I wasn't like a kid. So I'm in my 20s, shoot this deer. And I'm thinking, it's like you see on TV, you shoot them, they run off, or they just die immediately. Well, I shot it, good shot, and it runs off, lays down. I'm like, okay. I was already feeling bad, all right? I just got that kind of a heart. I felt bad. And so I wait, let him die, get out of my tree, walk down, hit him with the gun, and it starts moving and making noise. Guys, I about cried. Like I was heartbroken. I was like, Josh, you just don't need to go to heaven because, you just are awful. There's suffering and you're just sitting there. And I wasn't smart enough to put, something else in the gun because it's a muzzleloader to take and just, end it. And I was like, whoa. Now, let me just tell you, that was hard for me to deal with. I still think about it and get emotional because I'm like, that's awful. Could you imagine having to deal with that with persecuting people that were good? And you destroyed their life. Think about what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to build this mountain of insurmountable guilt and shame that we always deal with in our life because of what we do. And he's just like, how to do that? He says, listen to this, Paul, where sin abounds, where it is insurmountable, grace, the ability of God, much more abounds than that. So whatever you're experiencing, it's not even comparable, he's saying, to what I have for you. Okay, you guys with me so far? Okay, we're not done yet. We're not done. We're getting close. Now, here we go. Remember, suffering is simply defined as a hardship, something undergone, okay? Now, here's an interesting thing. Here's where we're going to take a turn. How many of you suffered when you were unsaved? None of you? You guys were like, great. Oh, yeah. How many of you went through something hard? Yeah, when you didn't know Jesus and you were, yeah. Do you guys have a hard time? Okay, so why did you have a hard time? The common answer would be, well, because I was a sinner. Well, let me just say, that didn't help you out. But you know really why you had a hard time when you didn't know Jesus? Because there's a simple verse that says this, that God so loved the world, gave his only son. So the reason why it was so hard for you was because that God loved you so much, and you who doesn't love you so much, the devil, his goal is to destroy whatever God loves. It's his goal. He can't touch God, he can't destroy God, but he has to go after the image of God, which is you and I. So that's the only thing he can destroy is that. So whether you were born again at the moment or not, whether you got saved yet, doesn't matter. He still hates us. Why? Because he thinks this belongs to him. And he doesn't know why he doesn't have it. And he doesn't know why his beauty, that God would choose us over him. And he hates that. And so he hates us. So don't think this. Don't think that if you don't know the Lord or people that don't know the Lord, that he's like, I love these guys. They're my buddies. That's not how he thinks. He hates everybody. Why? Because God loves them. And the only way he can try to hurt God is to hurt us. You see that? You see that? Anybody know what I'm talking about? So I said all that to say this. The suffering that we go through, a lot of times we'll say the hardship I'm going through is because I'm connected to God. Yes, that is true, but it's not the only reason that you're suffering. It's not because you got born again and then your life got harder because you got born again. Is your life any harder than it was before you got saved? Now, we're going to say yes. Now, why would we say our life's harder today than it was when before I was born again? And we're going to answer because of Jesus, right? Because of Jesus, now my life's harder because he doesn't want me to be victorious. And I'm going to say that that's okay to think that way, but that's not actually the true reality of why it's harder. Because it's easy to make not an excuse, but a justification when I have that reality. You guys ready to hear the answer? Just go like this. Yeah, come on, brother. Okay, so why does it feel so hard? It feels hard not because you're connected to God any more than before. Remember, he's not after you any harder because you know Jesus now. It feels harder because our way that we deal with it, our life, we no longer have those things which caused us to feel comfortable or to help us get through it. So before you knew him, we would use drugs, alcohol, sex, pornography, you name it, money, all those things, right? To cope with what we were struggling with or what we were suffering through, right? Or how about food? Come on, man, having a bad day, chips. Just go for it, right? Feel better. So we find some way to soothe ourselves through that, to make ourselves not think about it, right? Just don't want to think about it. And so we spend our life trying to not think about it. And when we try to not think about it, it actually doesn't change anything. We just try to suppress it. Don't think about it. So there's a difference between suppressing it and being free of it, okay? We just suppress it, meaning this, I just don't want to think about it. Someone brings it up, it just tears us up again because there's all these things. So there's different. He didn't want us to just suppress it. He wanted us to be set free of it, okay? So we just shove it down. Now, here's where the change is, because now you're no longer using those things to get through or to find rest. You're now trying to trust God to find rest. Okay? So it's not so much because you know him now that it's harder. It's because now you don't have the same tools you used to cope with before. Now those tools of self, I'm not gonna be overmatched. I'm gonna do this. And we're overmatched. Now we're trying to use another source, and that source is trusting God. Okay? Right? Before you may have used your fist to stop it. But then now God says, I want you to just trust me. Now, how hard is it for you to not do that when you used to do it before? Right? Think about what it is that you walk through and how you use that. Now, here's the thing why. Paul said this is one thing I do. I forget those things that are behind and I reach forward, right? So why is that so important? Because I have to forget what's behind. Otherwise, if I don't forget about that, it will hold me captive. Many people in this room, including this guy right here, I'm held captive by what my past says about me. And it's hard for me to get out of that. Why? Because I still think about it. I still meditate on that. And I still use methods which help me try to not remember that if just for a moment. Right? Just for a moment. New relationship, new situation, new this, more money, whatever the case may be, okay? So how do we do this? Now we go to Matthew chapter 11. Let's go there. Matthew chapter 11. Everybody doing okay? So we feel outmatched. We got to find a source. And now instead of it's not harder because, remember, it's not harder because you now know Jesus. It's harder because you don't have those methods anymore. I mean, you could still use them, but how many knows you still use those old methods? You feel worse than you did before. Why? Because you got a reborn heart. And your heart's like, it's got an alarm in there that doesn't like that because its nature is new, right? If you've never seen this, let me just throw it at you, okay? So like your finger, right? It naturally goes this way, right? I mean, anybody have any pain? Grab your finger and pull it like this. Anybody have any issues? But if I was to grab your finger and go back this way with it, what does your body start doing? It starts telling you, hey, let off. Now, why? Because it's not designed for that. Your heart, when it's reborn in the image of God, once it experiences things that it's got redeemed from, or it's the new creation reality, that heart alarm starts going off being like, I don't like this. I don't like this. It's not me. Come on, watch this. We take it as we're a bad person because we feel that. That's just your heart saying, I don't like this because it's not me, right? But we thought it meant God's like, I don't like what you're doing. I don't like you right now. Please stop. It has nothing to do with God. It has everything to do with our born-again heart, our new nature, right? It wasn't God up there condemning us. It was our new heart condemning us. Remember John 3? If your heart condemns you, God is greater than your heart, right? What he says about you is greater than how your heart feels about you. You guys with me so far? Okay, let's dig in. We're not there yet. So Matthew 11:28, here we go. Come to me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I'll give you a lot more work to do. Come to me, all you overburdened. Why? Because you're already overburdened. You're already carrying more than you were designed to carry, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. And he says this, and I will give you rest. Why? Because take my yoke upon you, learn of me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart. No, he said, take my yoke and learn of me. It's good learning. I got to learn how to yoke up with him, what that looks like. And he says, because I am gentle and lowly in heart. How many people always say that God is getting on to them? He's gentle in his process. Why? Because he's not insecure. He's not fearful. Most of my reactions that are aggressive are all out of fear. He's not fearful, so his actions don't have to be aggressive. Why? Because he's totally in control of everything, of himself. And he will find rest for your souls. My yoke is easy and my burden is light. Doesn't that feel good? Doesn't that verse feel good, but it doesn't feel like it matches our life at all? It's like I quote that verse all the time, but it feels like I'm constantly doing things. Why? Because I'm constantly carrying things, or I'm constantly using my own effort versus operating in him. It's just like me trying to tighten that thing myself versus just using the grace that machine has, the grace of God, the Spirit of God has to help me to do things that I can't normally do on my own. That thing you're trying to change about yourself, that's only going to change as I yield to the truth about who God says I am, and that grace begins to work in me to show me and to begin to reveal in me and work in me who I am. Right? Remember, dirt and water? You can't get that dirt out. You got to just keep pouring clean water in it. Keep pouring it. Eventually it pushes all that dirt out of the top of it till you got clean in the middle. But we have put so much effort into trying to change, and it has very minimal results. And then know why? Because I could have really bragged to James and them if I'd have got that done. Yeah, I put that in myself. I'd have probably told everybody that comes to the coffee line. Yeah, I just put this air conditioner on. They're like, I didn't even know you had it. Put no one in. Well, I'll just let you know. In case you were thinking about it. I just want you to know how great I am. You see what I'm saying? Why? Because I need validation. I need that approval. And what he is saying here in that verse is you don't need any other approval. If you come to me, you will have acceptance. You will not be rejected. You will be accepted, which will cause you to rest. Doesn't that feel good? There's something about the gospel, when you hear it correctly, it makes you feel like, oh, right? Just makes you feel rest. Why? Because that's your spirit, man, just like, okay, that's true. That's so true. And it causes rest. Let's dig on. We're not done yet, okay? I'm going to say this to you. This may blow you out of the water doctrine-wise, but suffering is not the mark of obedience. Rest is. Ooh, come on. Just think about that. Hit your neighbor and say, rest. Rest is. Why? Because we have been taught, especially in the charismatic reality, that suffering is a mark of obedience, right? I was always taught this as a pastor. Hey, if you're preaching stuff and people like you, you're not preaching the truth. I was like, uh-oh. I'm in the wrong job then, because I kind of want people to like me. Why do I do that? Well, it gives me just a reason that I can be rude to you. I can just be rude and say, that's the Lord. Why? Because you're trying to persecute me for just preaching the truth. Well, what if I'm just not being gentle and lowly in heart, but I'm just being a jerk? It's interesting how we can find scriptures to validate that opposes who Jesus is and how he carried himself. We just kind of throw that out the door. But remember, suffering is not that mark, obedience is. So here's what I was taught in charismatic, that if your life is falling apart, you must be doing something right. Right? Flat tires, devil flatten your tires. Oh, this is going on? Okay, well, you must be doing something right because your life is crappy right now. Right? And then we were told this. You know why it's crappy? Because if it's crappy, you can give God the glory for it. So God gets glory from crappy lives. But I don't think that's the story, right? Because how does he get glory for my misery? Well, you're suffering with him. Well, I guess you could say that, but that's not really That's not really, I mean, the hardship I'm going through is not really because the gospel, it's really because maybe the choices I made. So what ends up happening is we have this reality where it's like, okay, I must be doing something right. We have the Job syndrome where, because of all the bad stuff. So if that's bad stuff's happening, it must be the devil trying to destroy our lives. I have no doubt that the devil is in a lot of things, that he is the master of kill, steal, and destroy. But this is how he works. He doesn't kill us because he can. He kills us because he can convince us that we aren't worth living. Let's let that sit. Why? Because if he could kill you, he would kill you already. You would already been dead. Why? Because he doesn't have that authority. He lost all of it. So now all he can do is try to convince you and I that we aren't worthy. And therefore, when we feel unworthy, we move ourselves from him, right? He's not moving from us. And I become an enemy in my own mind, Romans says, because of wicked works or works that were not godlike. And I push myself away from him. And I continue to push away. And as I push away, I isolate. And then as I isolate, I become in a position that's vulnerable to believing that I shouldn't be here any longer. You see what I'm saying? You see how good of a manipulative lawyer he is in this work? Okay, now watch. So how does that bring glory? Look at Hebrews chapter 3, all right, with me. Is everybody okay? Okay, I'm gonna show you some stuff, so just hang with me, okay? Hebrews chapter 3. And we're going to look at in Hebrews 3, we're going to read verse number 16 through 19. Children of Israel, okay? Coming out of the promise, we're going to kind of talk about it. For who, having heard, they rebelled. Indeed, was it not all who came out of Egypt led by Moses, right? Moses led them out. 17. Now with whom was he angry 40 years? Was it not with those who sinned, whose corpses fell in the wilderness, right? Verse 18. And to whom did he swear that they would not enter his rest, but those who did not obey? So we connect sin with obedience, right? Okay, so sin. And he said they didn't enter in because they were sinful, because they didn't obey. Now, it says that they were rebellious. That's a good word. We like to use that word a lot. Rebelling just means this, that they were going against what God was trying to say. Everybody try to save anybody that's drowning? It's not like they're like, okay, I'll just relax, you pull me in. They almost drowned you because they're in such a panic that they don't know or they don't realize in their mind, because there's so much panic, they're so trying to save themselves that they'll almost drown the person that's trying to save them. And you ever realize that is a frustrating thing? You're trying to help somebody. You ever try to help a kid and they're just losing their minds because you're just trying to help them and they just think, I don't know what they're thinking, but they're just losing their minds and you're just like, oh my God, just stop. Why? Because you're trying to help them and they don't want help. Why? Because for some reason they think you're taking something from them. And this is what the people of God were thinking. They were like, God is trying to kill us out here. They were starting to blame him for the suffering that they were experiencing, for the Egyptians pursuing them. They were losing their thoughts on the fact that God was rescuing them at every difficult situation. Every affliction, he was delivering them. But they were like, he is trying to kill us out here. And they would have rather returned back to the bondage of Egypt where they could eat in somewhat comfort but be oppressed all their life than to have the simple freedoms. It feels more comfortable times to have religion oppression than it does to feel free. That feels more comforting, right? Because if I come up here and get on to you every week about, well, we need to do better here, we need to do better there, how many knows? Sure, we all need to do better, right? But the answer, the key is, how do we do better? I don't know about you guys. I've been at this for a while, and I didn't do very good. I'm still not doing that great about it. But I've seen more victory in my life, more peace in my life when the true gospel than with all the effort I've put in this thing in 20 years. Okay? You guys with me? Here we go. Look at verse 18 or 19. So we see that they could not enter because of unbelief. So let's add these two verses, right? To whom he swore they would not enter his rest, but to those who did not obey. So they would not enter his rest because they didn't obey. And the next verse says they could not enter because of unbelief. So unbelief, they could not enter because of unbelief, which caused them to have a desire to say, we can't do this. We're not going to enter in. We can't do this. And it wasn't because they didn't want to, it's because they believed they couldn't do this. They believed God could do it, but they didn't believe God could do it through them. How many knows it's easy for me to believe that God can do it for you, but to do it for me, I don't know about that. It's a big challenge. And so what he's trying to show them is this: the reason why they couldn't enter that rest was simply because they chose to not trust him, to trust what he said, to say that he was going to do this, right? It's easier to fall back. That's what suffering looks like. Was those challenges, it was like, do we trust God or do we go back to Egypt? Egypt feels so much safer for us. And he's like, if you trust me, it is victoriously beautiful through this process. It's going to be so different because it's unfamiliar. That's where you're going to feel the most suffering. It's going to be so unfamiliar. You remember when you met somebody for the first time and you did not know them very well and how awkward that feels when you first got the process going, right? You're like, so how's the weather? You know, and you're trying to have this conversation and it's just like, oh, we're just saying the dumbest stuff right now. And you want to do it, but just like, I just don't know what to say yet. And that's how we feel in the process. Is it in the beginning, it's like, what do? We don't know how to handle this freedom. Freedom in Christ. It's so hard to handle. But let's just kind of dig in one more thing, okay? Once that generation died off, watch this. Once that generation died off, they were able to do great things. You know, one of the reasons why they didn't want to go in, because giants. Something insurmountable, something that made them feel smaller. So one time I was in 7th grade, and that's in Locust, that's where we started football in 7th grade. They didn't have Little League football. You just started in 7th grade. So in 7th grade, we had a football team, and we went and played Tahlequah, okay? We were like 3A school. They're like 9A or whatever that big part is. So we go down there and play Tahlequah, 7th grade, all right? We line up, and they all look like they're the NSU JV team. I mean, we're just like little kids. Our helmets don't even fit straight. You know, we got that, remember the old school plastic one that had the 2 bars and then one down the middle? That's what we had on. You know, it looked like we got it at Walmart. And so we're up there, and we line up, and their quarterback's like, dude, sit. And we're just like, our quarterback's like, down, sit. You know, we're still in that phase. And it was just, I was like, oh God. And our team is just freaking out. Like our guys are like, dude, they're just like massive. This is over. You know, one of our other good players, you know, this guy was running back, and he's like, dude, you take it. I'm like, I'm smaller than you. He's like, you take it. So we got done with the game. We just got smoked. We got done with the game. One of the linemen rode back with me, and he was talking. He was like, yeah, man, that one guy, he just ran over me. So the next time I just got out of the way. I was like, thanks. Yeah, I appreciate that. But why was that the case? Because in our minds, we looked at ourselves, and then we looked at them, and we're like, there's no way we can win this. No way. Why? Because they're bigger than us. They're stronger than us. They got beards. We still have high-pitched voices. You know, so it was just one of those things that it's like, it's not going to work. And that's how we feel when we look at our world. We feel outmatched. You will always feel outmatched. Why? Because without Jesus, we do not have the grace of God. We do not have what he accomplished through his death, burial, and resurrection that empowers us gracefully to do what we could not do in our own strength. That's what he's trying to show us through this process. Suffering, a lot of times, now listen to me, majority of times our suffering is not because of him as much as it is because of what I'm deciding. And it's preventable. Why? Because if I suffer and I'm going through something difficult, and yes, if it's for Jesus or against, whatever the case, but I go through it with joy. I go through it knowing that no matter what this is, I'm going to get through it. I'm going to make it through. No matter if it takes a week, 2 weeks, a month, I'm going to get through this. You know, when I get sick, this is how I do. I get home, if I have sick, I get a hoodie on, I zip it up, I pull the hood up, and I go to sleep. Because I know this. If you let me sleep a little bit, I'll sleep this thing off. That's it. I just know. Now, it's miserable for a couple of days. It's hard, but I'll get through it. And so often, when we walk through these difficult things, it feels like it's never going to end. One more verse, 2 Corinthians chapter 4. Here we go. Remember, they went in. That generation died off, right? So the next generation went in. And when they went in, what did they do? The first thing they found was Jericho, a wall, a massive citied wall, a walled city. Yeah. And what they did was they literally blew a trumpet. They didn't have to blow it up with dynamite. They didn't have anything like that. They literally marched around it, blew a trumpet, and God made the walls fall flat. Just made them fall flat. And they learned this. They went in, remember the Rahab the harlot who hit him? She said this, we have heard. Inside this city, we have heard, and we are all terrified of you because of the God that you serve. We've heard of the God that parted the Red Sea. So let me just say this about you. Your enemies out there, they know the God that you serve. They know him. I'm not talking about maybe natural people. I'm talking about the enemy, the devil, all of his cohorts. They know the God that you serve. What they hope is that you don't trust him. And the reason is because they know that they're defeated. They know they have no chance as we trust him. It says this, we resist him. What's he have to do? He has to flee. I don't have to fight him off. I don't have to yell him off. All I have to do is resist him. What that means is this, is whatever he is saying, I just resist it with what God is saying. If he says I'm not worthy, guess what my resistance is? He has made me worthy. And he has no answer or comeback. Well, but I don't know. Jesus' blood cleansed me from all that unrighteousness. So watch what it's doing. It's just resisting. It says he'll flee. Why? Because he has no answer to that question. No answer or response to that situation. Last verse. I'll shut up. Here we go. 2 Corinthians chapter 4. I'll just read it up here. For who having heard, that's not it. Oh, the next one. Did I put it up there? 2 weeks in a row. Here, I'll just read it to you, okay? Is that okay? 2 Corinthians chapter 4, look at 16 through 18. Therefore, we do not lose heart. Means give up, quit. Even though our outward man is perishing, yet the inward man is being renewed day by day. So watch this. Even though your outward man may be aging, may be getting older, may not be going as well as it used to, he said your inward man never deteriorates. He just gets stronger, okay? He's renewed. He's refreshed day by day. Let's look at this. Verse 17, for our light affliction. Now, here's interesting. He said our affliction, or the pressure that we're under, that word affliction means the pressure, is light. Hit your neighbor and say light. I didn't say Coors Light, Bud Light. I said light. The affliction's light, all right? Which is but for a moment. So then he didn't say your light affliction. Then he says this, yeah, and it's momentary. It means this, there's an expiration date on it. So here's an interesting thing. He's trying to tell me that the thing I'm walking through, there's an expiration date on it. Here's what's interesting about me. I'm always trying to keep it alive. Is there things in your life right now that you're trying to keep alive? He's trying to say it's momentary. I mean, you're like, well, I don't know what we're going to do. I keep bringing it up. I don't know what we're going to do. He's trying to say, hey, what you're walking through, it's momentary. I'm about to bring you through it on the other side. Watch this. And he says this about it. Not just it's momentary. It's working for us. That word working for us means to bring about. So it's working for us to bring about a far more exceeding and eternal weight of glory or goodness or God's view. What the weightiness of who God says you are and the glory that he's going to reveal through you. He said that affliction you're walking through is producing a far greater result on the other side of this thing. Isn't that amazing how he sets that up? It's so interesting that so here's the thing about this. And I was thinking about this when it concerned like the coffee trailer. Is I keep holding on to it by always talking about my own strength. I keep getting myself in that affliction or that suffering because I'm always trying to do it in my own strength. I don't know who I'm trying to impress. But apparently I'm trying to impress God or somebody because I always try to do it. Check this out, God, watch this. Watch how I can do this. Yep, watch this. Just keep watching. You ever as parents, your kids are like, hey, watch this. Watch this. Watch me do this cartwheel. And you're like, that's the worst cartwheel I've ever seen. But they're like, hey, watch this. I'll do it again. It's like the same one you did before. Watch this. They just keep on. And that's what I feel like God sometimes like, watch me do this, God. Watch me do something awesome for you. And he wants to do something awesome through me. But I keep wanting to do something awesome for him. And the reason I want to do something awesome for him is so he'll say this, Josh, I really think you're awesome. And let me show you this. He already thinks you're amazing. He's thought you're amazing from the moment he created you. Why? Because he made you the way that he made you on purpose. Because he loves who you are. How many of you are always trying to change yourself into something that you think you should be versus just being who he made you to be? Man, that's a big pressure. I want to leave you with this. Verse number I think it's 18. While we do not look at the things which are seen, but the things that are not seen. For the things that are seen are temporary, but the things which are not seen are eternal. So if I keep my gaze on things that are natural, he said they're perishing, so therefore my strength will perish. If I look at it in the natural, my strength will go as the thing is going. So if it starts to deteriorate, my strength will deteriorate. He says this, that's why you can't look at that natural. You got to keep your eye on something that is eternal, which is God's word, what he has spoken to you. And if I keep my eye on that, then I can always continually be renewed day by day. Why? Because it's always perpetually recreating life. Does that make sense? That word never fails. When he said that he loves you, he doesn't ever have to repeat it because that's eternally how he feels. Why? Because it's not a timeline of love. It's an eternal love. It's something that always is. Like us, we say, I love you, and then 10 minutes later, they're like, you think you still love me? Why? Because it's now past. His is eternal. That means this. There's no time. There's no beginning, no end. So it's just, I love you. It means it exists forever in this moment, right now, reality. I love you, and it's never changing. And that's what he feels about each one of us. I want you to stand to your feet. I want to pray just for a second. Does that help anybody this morning, maybe? Somebody? So I'm just going to say this to you. The affliction that you're going through, the pressure that you're feeling, I will be safe in probably saying that makes you feel outmatched. Otherwise, it wouldn't feel like pressure. And so when you're feeling this pressure and it makes you feel outmatched, the first thing we want to do is we want to try to find a solution to it. We want to find a reason or how we've got to stop this. We've got to quit this thing. And the interesting thing about it, God's first response to us is, I just need you. I need you to rest. I need you to come, learn of me. Why? Because when you come and trust me, you can rest. First thing I want to do when I see something opposite, I want to start judging it. If I got conflict coming in my life from somewhere else, from somebody, I want to judge them immediately and say, okay, I know why they're doing this. They're doing this because they don't even like me. Let me just say this. What they're doing is nothing to do with us. It has to do with them. But if I want to take that on and say, yes, I know they're doing this because of this, then I've now created that pain in my own life. And it will be with me until I feel satisfied that they are doing or repenting or whatever the case may be. Basically, it means this: you'll be held hostage until they do what you want them to do. And that'll be eternally. It will probably never happen. So then the only answer you've got is to get them out of your life and then try to figure out how to not hold that against them, which is hard. But when I don't make that judgment, I can simply just say this: you know what, Lord? I don't know why that's happening. But what I choose to do is I choose to see it how you see it, which is this. I choose to believe the best of them. I choose to look at their track record, not just a moment in their life. Their track record in my life may have been they've always just been great to you, always been super kind to you. But then one moment just kind of blows everything up. What if I just said, you know what, they were great people. Maybe they're just going through something hard. If I take that perspective, then I take on a new perspective that maybe I should just pray for them. Father, just ask today that you would help them because they're going through something challenging. What that means is I changed it from being me-centric, that everything revolves around me, to everything revolves around him. So this morning, what I want you to do is I want you to just simply just close your eyes just for a second. I'm going to ask you a big question. Who feels outmatched today, right now? Maybe you come in this morning, you feel overwhelmed, outmatched in whatever it is that you're facing. Maybe relationally, in your work life, maybe just spiritually. You just feel like, man, I'm not very good at this. And it just feels kind of heavy. Maybe you just feel like you're disappointing God constantly. And what I want you to do is I want you to simply just respond this way. And the only reason I'm asking you to do this is because so I'll know who you are, and so I'm going to pray for you this week because I know that's a heavy lift. So if that's you and you're walking through that and you're feeling outmatched, just raise your hand, wave at me. Just you put it right back down. Thank you. I see your hand. Anybody else? Yeah, I appreciate that. Anybody else this morning? Thank you. Come on, you're maybe carrying some stuff. It's been hard, been a challenge. You're just like, I don't know what to do about this. And I feel like I'm doing everything.